It begins within. And so being able to get to a space where you are able to recognize yourself as love and exude that love. And when you are triggered, because you will be triggered in your relationship, to see that as an opportunity to grow, right? Because our partners mirror things for us. And we can either say, you know what? I'm triggered. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to heal that wound I never healed. And through that healing of that wound, because of this love, be able to go that much deeper into who you are. Because this is like the beauty of relationships. Relationships that can, again, not abusive relationships. I'm not talking about those. Relationships where, we're triggering maybe some abandonment wounds or maybe some anxiety in one another. Sometimes people they throw in the towel too soon and they look for another relationship, and inevitably it will show up again because there's something deeper there. And so in loving enough to do that inner work, and in that inner work, we get to truly meet ourselves. And then that's when we discover who we are authentically.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of To Hum is Human, the podcast where we explore the transformative power of tuning into our intuition to express our passionate purpose. I'm your host, Donnabelle, and I'm so glad you're here today. Today's episode, Our Perfect Us, Authenticity as the True Perfection in Love, explores love in its truest form, not the picture-perfect version we see in movies, but the raw, courageous, and deeply healing love that emerges when we show up fully as ourselves. My guest today, Tamara Thompson, lives and breathes this truth. A licensed marriage and family therapist, Reiki master, heart-centered hypnotherapist, artist, and author based in New York City, Tamara transformed profound personal loss into a powerful path of service. Leaving behind a corporate career, she followed her soul's calling to help others heal, awaken, and create relationships rooted in authenticity and connection. For over 15 years, she has guided couples and individuals in awakening self-awareness, taking accountability with compassion, and creating conscious, heart-centered relationships. Through her private practice, her creative work, and her brand, Our Perfect Us, Tamara reminds us that authenticity is perfection, and that when we live from our hearts, we embody the love and unity we were always meant to remember. Welcome, Tamara.
Thank you, Donnabelle. It's good to be here and to talk to you today. Thank you for having me.
Your journey began with profound personal heartbreak and loss. Can you share a little bit about that time in your life and how it shaped the healer you are today?
Sure. I got married pretty young to my high school sweetheart. And, we were young, wet behind the ears, and both of us had families where our parents were together for like 20 plus years. And we were eager to begin our journey together. Again, I had my daughter at a young age. Throughout my relationship, there was a lot of learning. We kind of grew up together, and in that there were a lot of wounds that we were not aware of, and that unfolded and kind of led to conversations that were hard, infidelity, and trying to work through that infidelity because I had a mindset of you have to make things work. Relationships are hard. And if you love someone enough, you could get through it. And so we stayed together after my daughter and after infidelity. And then I went on to want another child. And through that process, I had miscarriage after miscarriage for a few years, dealing with the losses, which was hard because no one in my family had ever experienced that. Later, I would go on to have a pregnancy that would make it to third trimester, and we were pretty sure she was a come-in, and I was going to name her after my grandmother, whose name is Luz, which means light in Spanish. And so my daughter, Luz, was born on 11/11, which is a pretty auspicious number. We were all very happy, but due to some complications, she ended up passing away the next day. And after that, that was a really hard time for me. I also had a hard time with the delivery. And yeah, it was a tough time. And so between that, the infidelity in the relationship took another hit. And despite what everyone said to me, about not getting pregnant again, not trying again, and putting my body through that again. One evening, I had a vision of a child and a knowingness that I had to try again, but that this time everything would be okay. And I got pregnant again and I ended up having my son. And my son is here and he's happy and he's healthy and he's actually in college. But from that, the relationship ended up ending. I got to a point where I no longer wanted to make excuses or live a life that I felt like I couldn't be who I was or who I am. Little by little, I lost pieces of myself. And I finally, after having my son, had the courage. Like once I saw my son, I said, wow, like anything is possible. Like this living, breathing miracle. If I could do this, right? Like co-create this reality, I can do anything. And so I made the decision to leave the marriage again, very plagued with infidelity, go back to school to become a marriage and family therapist and dedicate my life to supporting families and supporting individuals with being true to who they are and creating authentic relationships.
Thank you so much for sharing that powerful and emotional experience. That's such a pivotal moment in your life. And how can it not be? Because those
Mhm.
types of events really do change and shift our whole perspective in
Right.
life. I know that you spent some time, we'll fast forward a little bit, working in the corporate world. I was
Mhm.
wondering, what kind of work were you doing? And when was the moment that you knew it was time to leave that world and step into your full calling?
So during my marriage, I was working in accounting because I was always good with numbers. And so you're good with numbers. What do? You get into a job where you use your skills. And for me at the time, all that mattered was kind of making money, making sure my family was okay. Actually was quite lucky to get into the jobs that I had. Like I was very, very fortunate to get into the spaces I got into, but it was all a persona. I wasn't bringing myself, right? I was bringing some things I was good at, but there was no passion in it. And so it was after I had my son, again, that everything changed. I said, I don't want to work in corporate America anymore. I don't want to live this life anymore. Like, I'm not happy with who I see in the mirror. A lot of people were very surprised because I took
Mm.
a significant pay cut to go back to school to pursue my degree and worked really hard. It was, again, everything changed for me after I had my son and I had that experience. It gave me the strength and the courage to do something, to do a lot of things a lot
Yeah.
different.
Well, and I imagine you probably noticed that there was just more to offer than what you were doing in the cubicle or the office that you were in. And then you created your brand, Our Perfect Us, which is such a beautiful name and philosophy. What does it mean to you personally?
Right. A perfect us was kind of born out of this idea that we are perfect when we are who we came here to be, when we are fully in our authenticity. I just remember one day I was in the shower and I kept thinking like, no one is perfect. No one is perfect. No one is perfect. And then right behind that was the thought of like, what is perfection anyway? Right? What does it mean to be perfect? And I just kept going down this path, which really felt like, again, an inner knowing, a download, a revelation of we can be perfect, but it is our authenticity that is our perfection. So it's not going to look the same for everyone, right? And so understanding that there's no ideal. There was a societal ideal, right? The culture of the family ideal. But yeah, for me, it was absolutely perfection is authenticity. And our perfect us was more than just perfect us as humanity. Well, also Perfect us as in a perfect relationship, and
Mm.
two authentic people creating an authentic, perfect relationship.
In your work with couples, how do you help them move beyond judgment and perfectionism? The thing that you were talking about, how people see each other when challenges arise in a relationship, and how do you help them embrace their authentic selves?
It's the individual work. And so one thing that I share is if we have judgment towards others, that means we have judgment towards ourselves and vice versa. So where are you with the judgment? How do you talk to yourself? And so I work with couples. I have changed so much in the past 10 years in terms of the way that I work with couples, because now from in a foundational way, we talk about as you, the individual, where are you in your journey of non-judgment towards self? Because let's start there, right? Some people start outwardly and they say, I don't want to judge others. And then they get to themselves. And some people begin that journey inward, right?
Mm.
And so they learn how to not judge themselves. And then now they're able to not judge others. And so we have that conversation. It's a stripping away. It's like the peeling of the onion, a stripping of away of, who you known yourself to be,
Hmm.
and allowing yourself to be who you authentically are, again, without judgment, even without the judgment of how you got here in the first place, or the judgment towards your parents for quote unquote making you that way.
Right. Well, we all come in with our own BS, which is belief systems. What we come in with sometimes is inherited from what we were surrounded by, our own personal environment. So some of us were raised with the ideas of what love should look like. How do we begin to even untangle those stories and create relationships rooted more in truth?
It's an understanding of how you define love and also how you got there. So again, it's that level of self-awareness. I feel most loved when, again, and it'll tie back to the love languages. And then we'll have the conversation of, well, how did you experience love in your family of origin? Or where did you pick up what love is supposed to look like? What movies, romantic comedies maybe resonate most for you? Right? What is love? I mean, essentially, love is truth, right? And what is truth? Truth is authenticity. So I
Mm,
feel like truth is what happens when the mirror shatters. Everything you've known about yourself, you're open to looking at and challenging. How
mm,
did I come to be? Once you're able to be that real with yourself, and that's not easy. That's not an easy process. Once you're able to be that real with yourself, only then can you really experience love, the love that you are, the love that you deserve, the love that your partner is, the love that you can exist in together, because we already are love. And that is the truth. So if we can understand that and see that, again, without judgment, because there can't be judgment there, right? They can't exist together. Again, we have that conversation, but it's not just a conversation, it's an entire process of, are you okay with like shattering that mirror? You okay with seeing something different?
well, and I feel like it's also about not only shattering the mirrors, but putting away the shields that hide your vulnerability. Like, I feel like in a lot of relationships, people are not ready to show how vulnerable they are. And so the shields are protective. And so you were saying it's like peeling an onion. It's kind of, okay, you can put down your shield here, you can break this mirror here. And it is a
Mhm.
process. Now, you bring a unique blend of clinical expertise and spiritual practice to your work, from Reiki and hypnotherapy to art and sound journeys. How do these modalities complement one another?
You know, Donnabelle, I just follow my passion. And so when I was like acquiring some of these skills and tools, one, I felt like part of it was ancient wisdom, right? Part of it was part of who I am. I didn't know. I just went where I felt called to go, and it all ended up being healing. And so I, it wasn't something I set out to do in terms of, well, now I'm going to like acquire this skill and I'm going to integrate it into my clinical practice. It was, wow, I really love to paint, and painting is healing, and painting is expression, and painting resonates. And I love to do it. And so I started doing that more. And then the hypnotherapy, I wanted to go deeper with my clients. Some of my clients were stuck. And I was so fascinated by being able to get them in theta brainwave state and be able to support them with like tapping into memories that they weren't able to recall. And so weaving that all together, and I feel like I'm still in the process of that, like weaving that all together has been very fulfilling because what once felt like so many different facets of myself now feels like an integration. And I'm
Mm,
still again in the process of integrating, but now I love that I have all these different things in my tool belt, right?
mm,
Because now I'm able to pull them out according to what a client might need in that moment. And I feel like it all boils down to what I came here to do was to support people with tapping more into who they are authentically. Again, just being the love that we already are, but allowing ourselves to see it and exude it. And like you said, like put down our shield. Like, what does it take to
mm,
put down our shield? How do we walk in that trust
mhm.
with an open heart? And how do we know that we'll be okay, even if the other person, like the person on the other end, struggles to hold that space for us, that we can hold that space for ourselves.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes. So powerful, the work that you're doing. I love that you were saying when you were talking about your art, how your expressive nature and your creativity help fuel your work. Can you talk about the role of creativity in when you work in healing relationships with others and with ourselves?
Creativity is such a huge part of who we are as individuals. You know, you grow, you have all these experiences and realizations, and we are all creator beings, right? So I think, again, that it all boils down to the individual and being able to support the individual with tapping into their creator selves, right? And their creativity and their sacral chakra and saying, you know what, like, let's really tap into who you are as creators, experience that within yourself. And now, how do we bring that into the relationship? And how do we take who each of you are as individuals again, authentically, authentically, and now create something that is unique for your relationship, thinking outside the box, allowing things like an organic flow. And so I invite that in. So it's never me, right? It's always collaborative. And so I work best when I'm working with people who are able to open their hearts, who are able to trust themselves. And so that we can all use our energy and use our intention to create something that is going to be very unique for that couple.
Well, I loved what you were talking about with hypnotherapy and your pull to study hypnotherapy to get to places and states and memories that are kind of difficult to bring up in people's lives. Now, I'm curious about your journey to sound and sound meditation, sound journeys. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
That I kind of stumbled upon, but I like to say, or my belief system is I was guided there. And so I've always been interested in sound in terms of my own practices and my singing bowls and my drum. And I mean, anything I could get my hands on. I love to make music. Not a musician. This is just something I gravitate towards. But I was at an art show. I was showing my art. It was a group show and I met a person who asked me if I ever thought to put music to my art. And the truth was that I had, but I never did anything with it. So when he said that to me, of course, I saw that as a synchronicity and we got to talking. And this is where that was born in terms of my sound journeys. And so my sound journeys are all tied to an artistic like piece, an acrylic painting. And if we were to give, not if we were, because we did give sound to this piece. What is the sound of this piece? What is this piece saying in words? And so again, channeled, deeply rooted in love and connection. All of that was born. So yeah, this was my journey to sound journeys. And so it's something I appreciate in all forms. And I know that that's something that you do. And I love that. And I love the healer that you are too. And so, yeah, so that was my journey towards the sound journey.
Well, I love that you approach all the ways in which we heal ourselves and we heal our relationships with each other. And there's something really special about sound because it's really without words. You're working with the vibration and the frequency of particular bowls and instruments. How do you feel this modality can help people connect to love or unity and oneness?
It's the frequency, it's the vibration, it's the different hertz that resonate for the different chakras and meridians in our body, right? And sometimes we get so cerebral when we hear words and we attach different meaning to words based on our own belief systems, values, education level. And so this transcends words, right? This sound was in existence before words were in existence. It's really beautiful to see what happens for people when they allow themselves to be completely open to receiving sound and letting it resonate, getting out of their head. It's the getting out of your head and getting in the body the sound allows. Yeah.
Well, and it's such a beautiful way of introducing deeper states of awareness and consciousness. People go into meditation perhaps silently on their own, but when you're using sound, it just entrains the brain into this rhythm, into this manner of listening. Sounds amazing because it works on a cellular level. And I love that not only are you working with the mind, but you're really also working with the body and how we hold tension or stress or vulnerability or love. I think it's such a powerful tool and modality to use in many different ways. Now, for listeners who may feel a little disconnected from themselves or their partners right now, what's one simple practice that they could try today to
I think it'd be a bit of a tough question because once partners have had distance for some time, it can be extremely challenging for them to feel vulnerable and put themselves out there again, right? So there's a part of me that wants to say, start with touch or start with like, let's sit down and do this together. I don't know what they will receive on the other end. What I will share is I think that one thing that each person can do is state their intention with a pure heart. So if you come solely from the heart and you say, hey, I really want to connect with you. I feel like there's a closeness that I want to experience with you. Are you open to working on that with me? Are you open to connecting with me? I feel like that's the very first step, right? The stating of the intention. And if two people can both say, I want to connect, I want to connect deeper. Now we can get somewhere, right? Like now we can have other conversations. And if they're both willing to do that, then yeah, then that can look like anything. It can look like sitting down for a meal together, making a decision to take a walk together, something that's small, but again, like very, and I say small, but for some people that's everything.
Mm,
And
right.
so again, stating their intention.
Well, what are some of the signs of a conscious relationship that you've seen in clients that you've worked with? And how can we cultivate that kind of partnership over time?
We get to do our part. So in order to have a conscious relationship, you have to be a conscious individual.
Mm,
So already be walking the walk, right? It is impossible for one person who is walking the walk and super conscious and has this level of awareness to get into a relationship with someone who has a bit further to go on their journey. It will be impossible for them to have a conscious relationship. So a conscious relationship does require two people who are open and willing and aware enough. And it doesn't mean that they get everything quote unquote right. It just means that they're willing to be open, to not be judgmental, able to hold space, to not take things personally, to ask questions, remain curious, both willing to see the person as a separate, autonomous human being and love them. And true love is about not just what you can do for me. It's a me really wanting to get to know you. And, how come you make the moves you make? How come you think the way you think? What are you passionate about? What is your purpose? And so I work with a lot of couples where I'll ask them these questions and they won't be able to answer it. They won't know these things about their partner. And
Mm.
so if you're not aware of these things, either within yourself or within your partner, it will be impossible to have a conscious relationship. So it takes some work to get there.
I love that you are a facilitator in bringing those conversations to a place where they can feel vulnerable, but protected and safe and seen. Sometimes most people go through relationship struggles and try to figure it out. And some things can be solved within themselves, but then there's some that just over time just can't gain any traction. In your experience, what's the most common myth about relationships that keep people stuck? And how do we release it?
There are a couple of things that come up for me when I hear that. Like, I hear a lot of partners say, like, happy wife, happy life. Happy wife, happy life. So many. And I hear like a lot of wives saying that happy wife, happy life, and almost dismissive of their partner.
Mm.
And so this is one of those things where, and I'm sorry for the wives out there who might not like what I'm about to say, and it might happen. That doesn't feel very fair, right? It doesn't feel very fair and it feels very dismissive of another person. I would say that is a myth. That is something that can cause a lot of issues for relationships because it runs deep. And in order to have a happy, fulfilling relationship, two people get to be considered. Two people's wants and needs get to be discussed and hopefully met. But another one that I feel also falls under that same umbrella is like, well, relationships take sacrifice. Of course, I have to sacrifice because relationships take sacrifice. And sometimes within that one, it's uneven. Sometimes there's one person that usually acquiesces to the other. But relationships take intention. And relationships also value being able to, again, be seen and perhaps reach a compromise, reach something that feels like we made a decision and each of us feels seen in this decision.
Mm.
Sacrifice sounds negative. Here I go sacrificing for this relationship again. And so, no, like here I am giving to this relationship again. Here I
Mm.
am loving in this relationship again. Here I am hearing the needs of my partner and us figuring out together, collaborating to figure out what works for us, the unit, to where we each also feel seen as the individuals,
Mm.
right? So relationships take sacrifice is another one that I feel like gets to be reframed.
I love how you're reframing these because I've heard those. It always seems like there's a hierarchy in a relationship when it really should be a partnership. That's what it is, right? It's not one's opinion is more valued than the other. It's really how are we working in partnership with each other? Because you can't just let one person make all the decisions without really letting the other one not make any decisions. I imagine you work with people about this dynamic a lot.
Yeah, especially the one with relationships taking sacrifice.
Mm.
Like I sacrifice so much again. It can feel so different and it can be so different if you approach it from a place of love. How can I love more in my
Mm.
relationship and feel good about loving more and expressing that love?
Tamara, you've spoken about love as a path of awakening. What do you hope people remember about themselves and their relationships after hearing this conversation?
I hope that people remember that before they could have this amazing, loving relationship, it begins with self. It begins within. And so being able to get to a space where you are able to recognize yourself as love and exude that love. And when you are triggered, because you will be triggered in your relationship, to see that as an opportunity to grow because our partners mirror things for us. And we can either say, you know what? I'm triggered. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to heal that wound I never healed. And through that healing of that wound, because of this love, be able to go that much deeper into who you are. Because this is the beauty of relationships. Relationships that not abusive relationships. I'm not talking about those. Relationships where, we're triggering maybe some abandonment wounds or maybe some anxiety in one another. Sometimes people like they throw in the towel too soon.
Mm.
And they look for another relationship, and inevitably it will show up again because there's something deeper there. In loving enough to do that inner work, we get to truly meet ourselves. And then that's when we discover who we are authentically.
So, Tamara, how does intuition help you guide your clients? How do you feel into what's happening in their particular situation to really help them?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been very observant since I was a child, and I've always been fascinated by the interactions between people. And so I would say that that's something that I feel like I came in with, and an empath by nature and a double Pisces, sun and moon. I will say that my intuition is usually spot on. And so I
Mm,
can pick up on the energy as well as the subtle cues that the
mm,
body gives. I definitely am using all my senses to go beyond the words, right? Like we were talking about a little in terms of like the sound journeys, right? Like to go beyond the words and say, what else am I picking up on in this interaction? Because people, they don't know. Like sometimes we hide behind words. Sometimes words are just like we say the same story over and over and over and over again. And now it's a script and we are saying the script that we say and not even checking in about our feelings anymore. But the body usually has cues. And again, there is that inner knowing that I also trust in.
so powerful. Really, there is an aspect of being able to navigate what they're saying and feeling and how you're reading what's actually happening in the room. And that's a skill. Obviously, that's a skill. How do folks find you and see what you're up to?
I am on Instagram on Tamara Thompson, LMFT, or Therapy Tam. And on my website, I have my private practice. I have my office in Midtown Manhattan, but I also see clients virtually. And so, yeah, I'm kind of easy to find. Somebody can Google Tamara Thompson, LMFT, and there'll be probably quite a few ways in which they can get in touch with me.
Tamara Thompson, your work just reminds us that authenticity is the truest form of perfection. And that when we give ourselves permission to be fully seen in our relationships and in our own lives, we can create a love that's expansive and transformative. I thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your incredible journey with us today.
Thank you, Donnabelle, and thank you for everything that you're doing and bringing these conversations to the community.
Thanks for being here. I hope something from today's conversation stayed with you or gave you a new way to look at things. That awareness, that pause, that's where things start to shift. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who might need it. You can learn more about my work and what's coming up at sonorous.light.com, and you can follow me on Instagram at To Hum Is Human. Until next time, keep humming.